Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. Welcome to our final segment of the day and segment we've been eagerly awaiting. It's the decomplexifying procurement, a shift in strategy. Decomplexifying is actually a word in English. So decomplexifying procurement, a shift in strategy. We have really a star-studded lineup for this as well. The moderator here is Mr. Yasser Rizvi. He's the regional procurement manager at Agathia Group PJSC. He's an experienced procurement professional with a demonstrated history of direct and indirect procurement, working in logistics, supply chain, NGOs, and the FMCG industry. In terms of the panelists, we have Rasif Abdul Rahim, regional procurement manager at Noon.com, famous company, a procurement and contract management expert with experience of over 10 years in roles covering procurement, strategic sourcing, category management, SRM, contract management, and project delivery. Then we have Mr. Faizan Shahzad, procurement lead at Philip Morris International. Hello, Faizan, a seasoned procurement professional having 8+ years of experience in multinational FMCG companies across the Middle East, Pakistan. Faizan specializes in indirect material and services procurement with a special focus on marketing, digital, and professional services. Then we have Arakal Vedus, supply chain manager, Agathia Group, leading the supply chain function for Grand Mills division of Agathia, PJSC. So welcome, Mr. Arakal. Finally, we have Mr. Ananthapadmanabhan Ramesh, head of finance at Sharaf Cargo. Please, I apologize if I pronounced your name wrong, but I will call you Mr. Ramesh. Ramesh, you don't have a bio. They didn't give me a bio for you, but I'm sure it will be as impressive as the rest. So we look forward to hearing from you. I will hand it over now to our moderator, Mr. Yasser Rizvi. Please go ahead then.
Thank you very much, Sid, for the wonderful introduction. And good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone, wherever you are listening from. Today, everyone is talking about procurement as a service department, where we have procurement, like how they have decomplexifying the system, where they have like added a value when it comes to getting the best prices, when it comes to getting the best contract terms, standardizing, simplifying the process, and maximizing the business values. Especially we have seen in during the pandemic situation when it comes to sourcing the PPE, hand sanitizer, which was not available in the market in ample quantity, the gloves and everything. How procurement have like literally added the value in the operations, and then how they have given a growth to the organization. Plus, we will discuss something about the centralization and decentralization of the procurement when it comes to supply chain, logistics, cooperating with and collaborating with internal and external stakeholders, and internal, especially when it comes to the most nearest with procurement is finance, where we always have rivalry war with finance when it comes to payment terms, and I can see a smile on Anantu's face. And then when it comes to operation, the clear scope of work, it is not clear. Where is the requisition? When do you need this? What is the lead time required? All these things are there when it comes to the procurement strategy. So I will start with the introduction. I would like my panelists. First of all, I would be really thankful to MS Event to give an opportunity for the wonderful session, and then all the listeners to joining us, having a time, especially today is a working day and everyone is have taken a time to join the session. So I would like my panelists to please introduce themselves, then we'll have a session, and then we can jump into the Q&A session. So Mr. Faizan, you can start with your introduction, please.
Thanks, Sid. Thanks, Yasser, for giving a background and giving the introduction. So just briefly describing myself. I started my procurement journey back in 2012 from Pakistan, and primarily I specialize in the indirect stream of procurement, covering professional services, marketing services, other operational requirements within the company, focusing on CapEx and OpEx. But my main forte, I would say, is marketing services. Moved to Dubai back in 2015 in Mondelez International, worked there for about 3 years. And then I joined Philip Morris back in 2018, working as procurement lead, managing a team of 3 people, delivering on different indirect material services categories. And from here, we manage the GCC region, also cutting cross boundaries in the Middle East and Africa region, wherein possible we try to homogenize and create synergies across geographies. So in a nutshell, this is me.
Thank you very much, Faizan. We will have a lot to learn from Faizan when it comes to FMCG and the procurement. So we have a next Rasif on my screen. So Rasif, please introduce yourself.
Hey, hi there, guys. My name is Rasef. I've been into procurement for past 11 years. I have worked with different startups and different logistics industries out there. So I would say that my experience have right now really built up onto the logistics side. But I don't know if it's fortunate, unfortunate, but it is right now. So I have got a couple of backgrounds in other procurements, and I worked with a beauty company which manufactures other beauty products, shampoos, and other things as well. So during this procurement, I think it's been quite a great journey, and I think I have a lot of feuds with these people like operations and finance on a daily basis. So I'm looking forward to those discussions, how it could take us and open up our minds. Thank you.
Thank you, Rasif. Thank you, Rasif. I see. Indeed, logistic is a backbone of the supply chain. So you have, you got the right direction, I would say.
Yeah, I would believe that as well.
Great. So, Mr. Anantu Padmanabhan Ramesh, please.
Thanks, Yasser. Thanks for the brief also. So just to give you guys an idea about me, because Sid said he didn't have a bio. I've been a finance professional for the last 8 years, starting from 2012. Again, like Rasif, I've got my core finance experience predominantly in the logistics industry, even though I've worked on a few other industries also. While working in the logistics industry in finance, I did put my hands into the procurement side of things, and that's where I got a detailed idea on how the operation side of procurement works also. And like Yasser was saying, I've been lucky enough to work with Yasser, and we have had plenty of fights when we were working together when it comes to selecting the supplier, when it comes to the payment terms. So that, I think, is one of the reasons why Yasser decided to add me into this panel. Thanks, Yasser, for the opportunity. Thanks, everyone, for giving me this chance also.
Thanks, Anantu. Thanks a lot. What about the payment of my vendors? They are calling, man. Please release the payments first. Okay. So thanks. Now we have Arakal and me. Yeah. So Arakal and me, we are colleagues. And Arakal is exactly opposite to me when it comes to procurement. He's from operation. Please, Arakal, first introduce yourself.
Yeah, I think I substituted Anand, and I'm the new person whom you fight with these days. Anyway, hi everyone. I started my career as a strategy and management consultant for 2 years, then completely left that. It started in Delhi. It was a firm called Avalon Consulting and OCNC Group. And after that, I joined Agriya from demand planning, then moved into supply planning, then moved into logistics, and now I'm heading the supply chain function, which includes warehousing, logistics, a little bit of operations and planning. On a day-to-day basis, we interact with all forms of procurement from direct and indirect materials. So hope we'll have a good session today. Over to you, sir.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you very much, all of you. So I will start with Faizan. So Faizan, being a procurement professional in FMCG industry, you have worked in various sectors. You have worked in different countries as well, especially you are handling MENA region right now. So what do you think that what are the most special, crucial, I will say, ingredients for procurement as a function to deliver, especially in this modern world where the new technologies are there? What is your intake on this?
Okay, thanks for the question, Yasser. I think it's a very broad question, so I'll try to be as specific to the point as possible. So, as I told before, like I started my career in indirect stream and specializing in marketing services. So typically, if I go back 8-9 years, I see that most of the procurement, especially around indirect material services in marketing and professional services, procurement was basically doing all the critical tasks behind getting a service done through an outside supplier, while the main commercial discussions and all getting the proposal and everything was done by the function itself. what I have been through, the learning curve that I have experienced throughout the 8 years, and what I have been able to establish is basically you need to have trust within the teams. So procurement should have trust in the stakeholder function, like whatever the requirements, they are doing it for a reason. Whatever the strategies are, they have thought them through. And similarly, the stakeholder function should have trust in the capability and ability of the procurement teams, that whatever outside supplier they bring to the table would eventually give value to the business and to their goals and objectives. So I think attitude and trust, everybody should have an open mind. Other than that, the objectives and the SLAs and the KPIs should be, aligned and pre-aligned within the different functions. So if procurement has a cost-saving target, a portion of that should also be, reflecting to the stakeholder functions. So it's not just a single goal or objective that procurement is chasing, and the rest of the teams and different functions are not at all bothered about. So it has to have some kind of cohesion between different functions in terms of objectives and KPI monitoring. Other than that, I think demand planning is also one of the most crucial aspects. Typically, what we see, especially in indirect procurement, where we touch across the whole organization, basically, there's a lot of spot buy that happens pretty much at the last stage. So by that time, procurement, typically doesn't have a lot of time at hand to basically scout for suppliers, and they are more or less in a firefighting mode in order to deliver that project. But if procurement and stakeholder teams sit together in advance at least 4 or 5 times in a year, the frequency can be managed based on the scope of a certain function. But the basic idea from my side would be to have a demand plan in terms of what are the critical projects that would come into play in a certain year. Of course, there is always a provision that you have some last minute projects, something change, externalities change, like we just are in pandemic situation, like you mentioned earlier in the beginning of the session, like there was an urgent requirement of sourcing PPEs. So at that stage, procurement should be agile enough to source, and the policies should also reflect and basically digest the same level of agility that the business requires in that time. And all in all, I think in our lives also, technology plays a crucial role. The procurement should invest and the business should invest in the right technology platforms that procurement can use with regards to spend management, spend transparency, the whole P2P cycle, STP cycle. So all these things should come together. And lastly, I would say, especially from the tail spend management perspective, I think the major crux is basically automating the buying channels as much as possible. There are a multitude of ways through which you can do that. The most popular being the e-catalogs, the punch-out catalogs, e-contracts that you can pre-build in the system by fixing the supplier with certain commercial terms. And then the respective function can just do call-ups from that supplier without involving procurement at all. That would give some time for procurement to strategize other spends and also, be a watchdog on the whole process. And whenever the supplier is not fulfilling the SLAs and KPIs, they would come in and be the escalation point. So I think if all of this engine, maybe not in totality, but of course it's an evolution process. But I think, in my personal opinion, these are the key ingredients through which procurement and the stakeholder functions can work together in the present world and dynamically deliver on the business objectives.
Yeah, Faizan, I agree with you. And to be honest with you, you have covered the whole topic, in less than 5 minutes. You have summed up the topic seriously. That's great. See, you have touched a very sensitive wire when it comes to trust and the KPIs and the policies and procedures. So what I think is the strategy, the policy and procedure that should be defined and should be clearly defined with the all stakeholders, with finance, with operation as well, because it happens that we have a policy, we have a procedures, we have everything, but it's not implemented and it's not aligned with everyone, especially with finance. Finance is looking for something else and procurement is looking for something else, and when it comes to data spend, operation is not aligned in that, like you mentioned. So Anantu, I think you will be the best to answer this. Like, how we can build a synergy between this between procurement and finance.
Like, to add again, to take in a few points which Faizan was mentioning. Let's take in when the pandemic started and people were busy buying PPEs and sanitizers and stuff. from a finance perspective, our primary target or our primary goal would have been cost reduction. Whereas the primary goal of procurement, if you look at it, would have been to make sure that there is sufficient stock available. So that's one of the areas which always creates a problem, because the goals which finance is working towards and the goals which procurement is working towards are completely different. So prima facie, to attain that kind of a level of smooth operation, the first thing which we need to work on is to make sure that the goals between operations, procurement, and finance is clear. Everybody knows what the whole organization is working on. So this is one aspect. The other aspect which you need to look at is usually there is no clear segregation on who does what. Like, let's say, for example, should the request come in from operations or should the request come in from procurement? End of the day, we need to have clear segregation of duties on, let's say, procurement is going to raise the request or operations is going to raise the request. It comes into procurement. Procurement raises the LPO. LPO is approved by who? This kind of segregation of duties is clearly required. And the last aspect, which I think is another key point to look at in this, is the goals or the KPIs which are there need to be clearly defined. Most of the times when you talk about cost saving, let's say, for example, the masks which were there, you needed to buy a box of masks. When you look at the price, if it was 5 dirhams for a box and it comes to 4 dirhams, that accounts as cost saving from a procurement perspective. But when you look at it from finance, if you end up buying a larger quantity at 4 dirham, it doesn't contribute as cost saving for us, because end of the day, you end up spending more. So we need to have clear-cut goals, clear-cut KPIs which are defined for procurement, so that we know that this is what is the cap, and these need to be communicated to procurement also. If we can align all of this, I think the functions would work a lot more smoother. Over to you, Yasser.
Yeah, Anantu, I agree with you. That's a good point. And this goes to operation as well. For Oracle, that decoupling of purchase and inventory management. While you have seen that buying is a procurement faculty and inventory management is a supply chain forte. Quite often for raw and pack sourcing and this co-packing material. So what do you think? How important is that the differential and the joint KPIs to measure the success? It's important for procurement and operation.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, sir. For me, inventory is at the center of everything. It is an asset which can turn into a liability very soon. I would often compare inventory to the sugar levels in our body. You need it, otherwise it's disaster. But if you have too much of it, then also it's disaster. So when it comes to decomplexifying procurement, now we don't expect day-to-day inventory management to come from a buyer. I think that is not the right way, because operations, planning, or supply chain have the right visibility into demand plans, raw material requirements, lead time variability, what is the criticality of that particular SKU from a production perspective. Hence, I think it is important that operations take the ownership when it comes to scheduling, raw material planning, procurement expedition, and those kind of activities. Well, the procurement is clearly segregated in its duties when it comes to commercial aspects like price, negotiation, and of course, if there is a problem, if a supplier fails to deliver, or if there is some NCRs or non-compliance, procurement needs to intervene. So I think there are a lot of times these boundaries are not very clear. At the end of the day, when there is an out of stock, there is a disaster, and sometimes it's just pointing fingers at each other. And I agree to what Anandu's point says. Quite often, for an organization to succeed, definitely there are contrasting goals. At the same time, contrasting goals can also be aligned. So aligning of contrasting goals and segregation of duties is the key. And what is the supply chain forte should be done by the supply chain? What is the procurement should be done by procurement? Let's keep it simple. And the bottom line in all this is, even if no matter how much you get it right on paper, no matter how much you get it right in Excel, things will go wrong, especially in FMCG or in any industry, things will go wrong. And there, I think, like they say in any relationship, the key point is to communicate. So open channels of communication, both formal and informal, is, I think, very essential between procurement and operations.
I think Oracle has a lot of troubles with procurement. So I have to discuss this with you. That's a good point. Oracle is raising. See, in these days, earlier, it was inventory was an asset. Now it's a liability on the organization. That's why, like, we have a supplier managed inventory. Now we have Kanban system, we have two-bin system, just to avoid the excess inventory, surplus inventory to stock, because we have to reduce this liability as much as we can. So when it comes to inventory management, Rosef, what do you think? How the technology can be used in procurement to manage this? Can you just give some light on this?
Yes. Okay. Thank you. Yes, sir. I would say that procurement like decomplexifies the complex. There's a lot of complexity in business, which we work to decomplexify. Procurement right now being in the chair out of different board meetings, we discuss how really to complexify the complex things, what happened during the time. When internet came along and e-commerce began to flourish, procurement functions started moving away from the traditional way of using, you could say, papers and all those tedious process which we are going through. So the moment we are incorporating the technologies into this, initially we start decomplexifying the process. Like when you touch the points which Ramesh was pointing out, like the segregations. The segregation falls into place. The inventory managers falls into place because proper notifications are being said. So in this manner, if you say, okay, take for example, like if you look at the research right now happening. See, a research from a procurement leader shows a fully automated procurement function could save a global 5,000 at least up to 86 billion annually. How do we save 86 billion? It's like literally by decomplexifying the situation itself, like having a proper inventory management, proper segregations, and like it will really improve the operational performance. Okay, and we'll have now most of the procurements are happening globally, are having centralized procurement. So if you want the centralized procurements, if you ask me personally, it's a very complex structure. It's a very complex structure. If it's not been integrated properly to a proper ERP system, it's a very complex thing. Informations are passed down in a different manner. So the technology really helps you to improve the spend visibility and the lower cost, improves the global procurement vision on that, better operational performance. It will standardize the workflow. That what like the same thing what Ramesh was speaking about. Like the moment you standardize the workflow using these electronic procurement technology, it will create more process efficiency. It will reduce the need to deviate from the actual process. Right? It will simplify the process. So I would rather say that the future is anyway technology. Definitely procurement will be moving away. The technology will be taking over. The automations will be taking over the more tactical things. We in procurement will be moving towards more strategic things, more strategic visions, where things will be more smoothened out with either finance, operations. We all will be aligned. Technology will keep us in a single table, like I would say that. That's what OT asset. That's what I would love to say.
Yeah, Rasif.
Yeah, I would like to add something there.
Sure, Faizan.
Yeah, I completely echo as to what Rasif said, that technology would be at the forefront of the future in terms of procurement and decomplexifying everything. But I think the main question here is at what stage of maturity the organization is today. So what is their current status in terms of procurement and the relationship with the stakeholders? So if it's a company which is being run traditionally, with a very reactionary approach of procurement, then technology maybe today would not solve all their questions or all their problems. You need to create that bridge and that stakeholder confidence within the capability of procurement. And later on in phases, you can implement technology. Of course, buying things centrally is a very important aspect of procurement because you are consolidating volume. But hearing the voice of the stakeholder is also similarly crucial as well to this whole operation. So we have to have that sweet spot where you have central procurement as well as have some kind of contact with the local stakeholder, wherein you are listening to their voice also and addressing their concerns as much as possible.
Yeah, I agree with you. That's good point, Faizan. We cannot have I don't know, that's my personal perspective. We cannot have a complete centralized procurement because you have to be in touch with your local suppliers, with your local stakeholders to get. So hybrid system would be the best system. And when it comes to technology, yes, centralized work that on our economies of scale, when we have the data, we can have a spend analysis where we can get the data in your headquarters. I was reading one of the research somewhere in a week back that by 2026 somewhere, the 50% of the population will be out of job because their technical job will be taken by the technology.
Yeah,
And in fact,
that's true.
when it comes to procurement, the this artificial intelligence, ERP system, MRP system, processing, converting PR into POs into P2P system will directly be taken over by the technology. So
Yeah.
Faizan, I think what do you think when it comes to procurement? We have seen that sometimes the involvement of the procurement uh, it delay the process and it complexify the system itself. This is the major complaint which usually operation says that if
Yeah.
when it will go to the procurement, they will
Yeah.
go through the three quotations and the comparison
Yeah.
and the commercial
Yeah.
reviews, especially when it's come to the critical parts. So what do you think that
Yeah.
how procurement can involve in this?
I think it's one of the most basic questions probably every procurement guys go through in his life, professional life.
Yes.
Like you guys will take a whole lot of time, and I need this yesterday. I need this yesterday, and you will probably delay it too much by succumbing to your process. I think it all boils down to the same thing that I talked before. Like I think instead of just sharing the information at the very last stage with procurement would always create such issues, because procurement by definition is an audited function, especially because it involves dollars, and it involves eventually payout to external parties, so they have to abide through a certain process. Now the business can mutually decide, like for instance you can get a bidding threshold for various types of purchases, or you can also have a standardized bidding threshold. So for instance, if anything less than $20,000, you don't need more than one quotation and business can proceed with it. However, if it's a high value purchase, then you should have a proper bidding done in place. So I think it all boils down to the collaboration, and as much ahead the information comes to procurement function from the stakeholder, the better this time can be managed. But having said that, I think there should be a policy and there should be a provision in the policy to have to entertain the last minute purchases, or something that comes out of an emergency situation. Probably you have a breakage in the manufacturing operation, the machine broke down and you need the part immediately that was not inventorized because of high value. Then in such cases, you should have a special approval matrix from the operations director or the finance director and the procurement director to basically source it on an immediate basis. So such provision should be entertained in the policy, and at the end of the day everybody is audited against the policy. So it all comes together when we collaborate, and moving back to Oracle, communication I think is the key here.
So
I would
Oracle,
like
how
to, yeah, sorry.
Thank you.
I would like to add
Yes.
as well here on this, like when he was pointing out the procurement see, I would say that the operations would have to react a bit more proactively most of the time. All important things are not urgent and all urgent things are not important. So it's always they have to keep in mind certain things. If it is important, we do have to see. Now we are going through a very flexible sort of business model. Business has to be flexible in different ways. The lack of flexibility will cause problems not in procurement, in any other departments. So we being more flexible, anything which is urgent and important at the same time can be definitely considered. And anything which has been delayed, for example, the operations keep it for a while and comes back, then calls it urgent. It's not really urgent in time. It was never urgent in the first place until it's been on a bucket for a long time. Over to you, Yasser. I just want to add that, yeah.
Sid was trying to say something.
Yes, sir. I wish this discussion never ended, because I was really listening intently, and really they had some very strong points, and it was a very organic discussion. So I wish we could continue this for another 1 hour, but maybe we'll have to take it offline, or we'll have to take it on chat, because we have in fact reached the end of our session. So I'd like to thank the panelists and moderator, Mr. Yasser. And I would like to wrap up the session today. So thanks, everybody. I'll just give a few comments before we go. I've been to many conferences. I've never been to one which combines 4 different functions so naturally together. And we've had them speak, and we've had people from different perspectives speak, and around the common goal of how to be more prepared going forward after a pandemic such as we have. So we heard discussions about overhauling and revisiting supply chains, managing risk, enhanced preparedness. And therefore, we reached the end of this particular session. I think we will be back next year. Please feel free to connect with the organizers, with me, with Moglix, my company, and anybody else other than the suppliers that you feel you would like to talk to, because we will still be here for some more time. And please feel free to post about this event on social media. That's all for me. A big thanks to the audience, the organizers, sponsors, and especially the people who are interacting and took time out of their day. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thanks.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Thank you.
Bye.